All right, Mr. Chair, the time is now 5:17 PM and you can call the meeting to order.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Commissions. I will call the meeting to order, and I want to introduce our clerk of the county, Suki Purewal, who is here today and will be helping us with running the meeting. So I'll turn it over to you now to give people instructions on the Spanish interpreters.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Live interpretation of this entire meeting will be provided in Spanish. To access live interpretation services in Zoom, please click the interpretation globe icon in your Zoom meeting webinar controls and select the Spanish language. At this time, I would like my colleague, Teresa, Spanish interpreter, to provide these instructions in Spanish, and then I'll start the Spanish channel.
Buenas tardes a todos los presentes. Si necesita la interpretación al español, favor de presionar el globo que aparece en la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccionar el idioma español.
Thank you. The Spanish channel has been started. Back to you.
Thank you. And will you also? I think she was talking to someone else. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And could you also do the roll call?
Sure.
Score?
Commissioner Wesley Liu.
Present remotely.
Thank you. And just for the record, you'll be able to listen and participate, but won't be able to vote. Amaya Nori. Present. Thank you. Commissioner Corinne Huber-Levy.
Yes, present.
Commissioner Agarwal. Thank you. Commissioner Bocanegra. Present. Commissioner Genevero.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Satvik Nori is currently absent. Commissioner Rasmussen.
Here.
Commissioner Singh. Absent. Commissioner Swope. Absent. Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
And then Chair Monroe.
Luis.
Luis, yes.
I am present.
Thank you. And so 3 are absent. Please
And I
proceed.
believe that Commissioner Singh will continue to be absent, might be joining by Zoom, and Commissioner Swope and Nori are on their way. So should be joining us in person. Okay, great. I think we have a quorum, so let's get started. It's October, and in October and November, we tend to have busy meetings. We have a lot to cover. Tonight, the main order of business is reviewing and approving inspection reports. We also have a report on educational testing from the testing team committee. Commissioner Wilson will lead us through that. And then we also need to deal with election of officers or nominations of officers. All right, so that's the agenda. Sorry, before we get to the agenda review, we have minutes from August and September that need to be approved. Is there a motion to approve minutes?
I make a motion to approve minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Huber-Levy. Commissioner Bocanegra for the second. Any discussion? Why don't we start with August? Did you have any edits or comments?
I did not.
Anyone else?
Wesley has this. Oh, maybe he's talking to someone else. I apologize.
Yeah, I think he is here.
No, he's talking to somebody else. Okay. All right, if there's no discussion on the August minutes, then all in favor of approving the August minutes as submitted, say aye.
Mr. Chair, one second, sorry.
Yeah.
Let me ask for public comment.
Oh, apologies.
Any public comment on the August 2023 minutes? Okay, no hands are raised, so go ahead, take it.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the August minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Okay, the August minutes are approved. would you like to move to approve the September minutes as well?
I make a motion to approve the September minutes.
Commissioner Bocanegra, second. Did anyone have any changes or edits on the September minutes? All right, hearing no discussion, Mr. Clerk, could you call for public comment?
Sure. Any public comments on the September 23 minutes? Okay, no hands are raised.
Great, thank you. Then let's move to a vote. All commissioners in favor of approving the September minutes as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the September minutes are also approved. Thank you. I'd also entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you, Commissioner Ufalati. Commissioner Bocanegra, you all are doing all the work tonight on the motions. Were there any changes, any edits, anything needed to the agenda? Looks good. All right, no discussion. Do we call for public comment on this as well? No, Mr. Clerk. Okay, all right. All in favor of approving the agenda as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
I think the motion passes. Thank you. All right, let's get on with the business of the night. The second part of our agenda is where we pause for public comment on any items that are not on the agenda. If there are any members of the community that want to let us know about things related to juvenile justice that's not already on the agenda, now's the time to raise your hand. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. If we have public members in chambers, there are speaker slips all the way at the end. You can fill out a speaker slip and then give it to me. And for the record, we have Commissioner Satwik Nori present?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then,
And Commissioner Susan Swope.
okay, awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
They both are present at 5:24 p.m. And we're doing public comment right now. So members of the public, if you wish to comment on Zoom, please do raise your hand now in Zoom. If no hands are raised on Zoom, any public comment from this room? Okay, no public comment.
Thank you. All right, moving on to section 3 of our agenda. This is where every month we ask our partners in the county to update us on what's going on in the system. And the first person we would call on is the Honorable Judge Susan Etizadi, who I see has already unmuted herself. Your Honor, please go ahead.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. Have a good Halloween tomorrow evening. I know that's why we have the meeting tonight. I really don't have anything to add unless folks have some questions. I have nothing to offer or add this evening.
Commissioners, yeah, go ahead.
I understand that Camp Kemp is going to be closed. I know no details, but does that affect anything in your world in terms of commitments, time, or anything? Does it have any impact in your area?
You know, I'm going to defer on that because I have a call in to Chris Avalos to discuss that with him.
Okay, so too
I
early
haven't
to
been
know.
officially notified of that, but I've heard that. I think we only have one youth in the camp. I mean, it's a wonderful program, as many of you know, the girls program. Clearly the numbers have dropped, but I want to talk to probation further about it before I comment.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions from commissioners? Nope, don't see any. So, Your Honor, we, in the past, we've usually moved right on to the next agenda item, but the clerk has let me know that we probably should have been calling for public comment after every agenda item. So, so I think we'll do that now.
Sure.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the judge did not have any reports, so I don't think there's any public comment, but we'll still ask.
It's up to you. It's
Yeah.
up to you.
So
Yeah.
members of the public, if you wish to comment on judge's report, please do raise your hand now in Zoom. Okay, no hands are raised, Mr. Chair, and anybody from chambers? Okay, none, back to you.
Thank you. The next two items on the agenda are our normal. Normally, we have the private defender group and probation present. I don't see any of them on the Zoom right now. So we may need to skip these items or in the room. So we might need to pass on these items right now and come back to it. I'm actually seeing that Ron Reyes from the private defender group is trying to get on. It doesn't have the right link.
Yeah, that seems to be happening.
Yeah, so I will, I want to just maybe text that to him right now, so give me a minute.
The chair, if the link is not working, you can enter it by just entering the meeting ID. So maybe try just entering the meeting ID.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. If one of the other commissioners who has Mr. Reyes' contact info could maybe send him the link while I keep the meeting moving along, I appreciate that. Right, so not seeing anyone from the private defender group or probation on the Zoom yet.
Probation might have said that they can't make it.
And it's also possible that it being a Monday, I think they can't make it. So we will keep moving in the agenda and maybe circle back to these agenda items. Let's move on to getting to the main order of business, which is approving inspection reports. So that's section 4 of the agenda, and section 4A is the Canyon Oaks inspection report, which was in the agenda packet. We talked about this last month. I was the sort of lead for the committee that worked on this. And there were a couple of suggestions that commissioners had for information to add to the report. So I did that, included it in the agenda packet. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review. I'll make a motion since I led the committee for the report to approve this report as submitted. And there's no second needed since it comes from a committee. Is there any discussion? Did anyone have any questions about the changes I made or any other comments on the Canyon Oaks inspection report?
No, well done.
Thank you. All right, we got across the finish line on one. Fantastic, or well, we haven't yet, we have to vote on it. I will just, this is a little bit out of order, but section 5D of the agenda also mentions the Canyon Oaks education report, which I attended the education inspection with Commissioner Wilson, and it was my responsibility to write that up, which I haven't completed yet.
Okay.
I'll bring it to the November meeting. I just want to let everyone know that this Canyon Oaks report is specific to the facility itself and the programming they have there, but not the school. Okay. So I guess before we move to a vote, let's call for public comment. Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public, if you wish to comment on item 4A, the Canyon Oaks report, please raise your hand in Zoom. Okay, no hands are raised. Anyone from the room? Okay, no public comment. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. So all commissioners in favor of approving the Canyon Oaks inspection report as submitted in the agenda packet, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Who made the motion and the second?
I made the motion. There was no second because it's from a committee.
Oh, okay, so.
Yeah. And anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, hearing none, then the motion passes unanimously. Let's circle back now to section 3B of the agenda, because Mr. Reyes from the Private Defender Group has joined us. I've promoted him to be a panelist already. So Ron, welcome. Sorry it took a little while to get on Zoom. We'd love to hear any updates you might have.
He's just rejoining as a panelist.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right.
Hear you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. So my update for this month, we made 50 appointments. Out of those 50, 10 cases involved 707B allegations. We only had one sealing that we processed this past month, and we received 71 calls in total on our Miranda consultation hotline for the past 4 weeks.
Great. Thank you. Did you have anything else?
No, and I think the governor did sign SB 448, and so that will be the law starting January 1st. And that's regarding detentions.
Yeah, could you just remind us what that is about?
Yeah, that bill gives authority to the court to consider out of county youth to be released on alternative programming like EMP or home detention.
Right. Great news. Terrific. Are there any commissioners with questions or comments for Mr. Reyes?
No, just thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you everybody who reached out to me. I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, thank you for all your efforts on that, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Clerk, could you call for public comment on Ron's report?
Sure. Members of the public, if you wish to comment on item 3B, the private defender update, please raise your hand in Zoom. Okay, no hands are raised. Any public speakers from here? Okay, no comments. Back to you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Ron.
Thank you, everyone.
So we will get right into it now. To 4B is the next agenda item. This one will be will take a little longer than my inspection report approval, I assume. So Commissioner Rasmussen, take it away to talk about the Camp Kemp inspection report.
Thank you. Do I have permission to share my screen?
I believe you do, Commissioner, yes. Oh, yeah, you're a panelist, yes.
Here we go. Slideshow?
Yeah, just click on slideshow.
All right, perfect. All right, here we go. Okay. So this year's Camp Kemp inspection was performed by Commissioner Bocanegra and myself. We went on 2 separate days. And on the first day when we went to interview the young ladies, there was 2 young ladies there, but unfortunately they both had COVID-19. So we had to schedule a trip to come back. And when we returned, there was just one. So an overview of the program this year. There were 9 youth served in the program, 6 from San Mateo County, 3 from Sonoma. During this inspection period, the contract with Sonoma County and probation department ended. Program participants ranged in age from 14 to 18, and the average age was basically 15 and a half. The average length of stay was considerably longer. It was 95 days longer than it was last year. And during this time period, the facility continued to be closed in the evening. So the children were continued to be transported over to the juvenile hall at night to sleep. And as of right now, there are 0 youth in residence. The young lady that we interviewed has left the facility. Oops. Okay, so Camp, this is the accommodation section of things that are going well at the program. Camp is designed to provide treatment in a home-like environment. It's clean, well organized, and generally good to prepare. They have a dedicated mental health space, and it's equipped with therapeutic tools where the children go in to receive weekly mental health therapy. And it's really, I went in there, it's quite comfortable. It's very conducive for mental health treatment. The staff go above and beyond to help the youth. The youth feel very connected to the staff. They feel that the staff is invested in them, and they have a very good relationship. The staff also encourage family to participate whenever possible. And we had a camp participant graduate from high school during this inspection period. And it was a beautiful celebration. The staff came and made signs for the kids and were waving up, very supportive. It's a very personal and supportive environment for these girls to be in. So that was a huge accomplishment of the night. One who was of age to graduate from high school. Our recommendations. Our recommendations for this year are to create an exit survey for youth and families. So when a youth is ready to be discharged or moved into the next phase of the program, they're given a survey to complete that asks them, how did we do? Was there something that was exceptional? Was there something that really helped you? Was there something you didn't receive? How can we improve? And to offer the same for the families. And this will give us an opportunity to really measure how we're doing and to maybe even come up with some new ideas on what could be offered if there's something that we're not offering. Our second recommendation is to offer substance abuse treatment services. There was an issue with the undergarments this year, and the girls were advocated for themselves and were able to get an alternative bra. And so we'd like to just go on record as recommending that they all receive a sports bra so they can participate in all their programs. We'd like the library to be updated to include some law books and legal materials. We'd like the children to be able to participate in regular religious services. And we'd like the grievance forms to be translated in English and Spanish, because we have had in the past Spanish only speaking residents. So we think that's important. We'd like the contract with rape trauma services to be restored. And we'd like to resume the in-house food program, which in turn means terminating the contract with this San Mateo County Sheriff. One of the big highlights of this inspection is that probation gave us some data on the food and nutrition. This is something we've been looking at for a couple of years now, since the switch was made to have the Sheriff's Department provide meals via the county jail. And so we got some data which was really eye-opening. And so what we found out was that we are spending $89.94 per meal. We also found out that the actual food cost for breakfast is $2.73. And the actual food cost for lunch is $4.27. We also receive reimbursements from the state and federal government for school lunch and breakfast programs. So we are spending $179.88 for breakfast and lunch per day per youth. And last year, the budget was $1,707,000, and the actual cost of food service, and this is a combined Camp and Juvenile Hall, was $1,700,000 and $5,714.36. So this is an extraordinary amount of money. And I think we're all well aware of the problems and the grievances and complaints that we've received since the switch to the Sheriff's Department. So we're recommending that an audit be performed so we can determine how we can both improve the food and decrease costs. Certainly, these are high costs, and I think that we can do better with what we're spending. Staffing recommendations. So with the low population has come budget cuts and reduced staffing. And at this facility in particular, it's really been impacted, closing at night, having the kids go over to the hall to be supervised. So we'd like to recommend that the Board of Supervisors ensure that if this program is to indeed keep operating, that it be given the funding necessary to operate as it was designed to do so. And we'd like there to be minimum staffing levels that are maintained so the youth don't have to be transported over to the juvenile hall. The facility and the program are a model, like in the whole state, could even be for the country. And so we really do ourselves and the children a disservice by taking them out of their home-like environment and putting them back to the juvenile hall and into cells. We'd also like the staff to undergo training, and this was at their request. They brought this to us. We'd like them to be able to receive training in ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, trauma-informed practices, and teen mental health. Staff also expressed a desire to go back to their 4-10 weekly work schedules, where they come in and they work 4 days, 10 hours a day. And it's my understanding that this was taking place prior to the pandemic and that this was stopped. The changing, going back to the 5 8-hour days brings about a variety of hardships for staff. It's an extra day of commuting. It's an extra day of daycare. It's an extra day being away from families. And staff have expressed that with the lower number of staff that they have and the complexities of their jobs, they're working with youth who have more serious offenses and more serious issues to deal with, that they need that extra time to be away and to sort for their own wellness and well-being. And so we'd like to advocate for them for that as well. And we also think that a 4-10 work week would also help with recruiting, because we're all vying for the same people, right? The same qualified applicants. And if we were to offer a 4-10 work week over a 5-8 work week, I think that would give us an advantage. It would be attractive to people who might be considering joining the department. Right now, in order to promote, we have group supervisors 1 through 3. Those are the individuals who actually work with our youth on the housing unit and in the Camp Kent facility. And right now, as it stands, you do not need a degree to be hired on as a group supervisor 1. But if you would like to promote, you need a degree to promote to group supervisor 2 or 3. You do not need one to promote to ISM, however, which was interesting. So what we're proposing is that maybe the degree requirement be removed for folks who have that their lived experience and their years of service with the department, that be allowed to equal a degree, because we're losing qualified, seasoned employees, and they have a lot of value, and they know how this is, they know how we work, they know how things are done. And I think it would give them an incentive to stay. We've had several employees leave over this inspection period. And we'd also like the department to consider longevity pay for employees with 5 or more years of service. And again, this is to help retain staff. So it's very difficult to recruit and retain. So hopefully this would maybe assist in these efforts. Maintenance and repairs, there was basically just 2 items that came up, and the fencing and gate at the front of the facility has been broken. This is the 2nd year in a row we've reported this. there's pictures here, and you can see this hole, and that's a considerable hole. And at the bottom of the hole is this really big pipe, and it's really dangerous. Let's say, you know, a young child is, you know, wandering around, even for wildlife, right, to get caught in there, right? It's just not a safe situation. And in order for the county to reduce their liability should something happen, we think that that needs to be repaired as soon as possible. We also think that the open gate also presents a potential safety issue because there's nothing that keeps folks out of that area from being in there. And so we have to believe that the gate was installed for a purpose. And so it's important to keep the facility in good working order. But out of the whole facility, these were the only two items. So the facility looked great. The future of Camp Kemp. I think that as of right now, I've talked with behavioral health and recovery services. I've talked to probation. I've talked to various service providers. And I don't think anyone really quite knows what the future of Camp Kemp will be. But if the residential component of the program continues to be suspended due to vacancy, if we don't continue to not have any children, the commission would like to recommend that the Board of Supervisors take action to explore the possibility of converting the facility for other uses. And those uses would be either a boys' camp for boys who would have traditionally gone to Camp Glenwood when that was open, or to convert it into a residential substance abuse treatment center for youth. Because in San Mateo County, currently we do not have a single bed for substance abuse treatment for youth. And as we know, the fentanyl opioid epidemic has impacted our youth, as will come up in the next month inspection of the juvenile hall. We actually have an opioid withdrawal protocol now, and we've had children come in who are withdrawing. So the needs are great, and I think we can fill that gap with this facility. It's a beautiful facility. It's not that old, and it wouldn't take much to repurpose it to fill some gaps that currently exist. So that is basically the highlights of the report. And I will open it up to any questions.
Commissioner Rasmussen, thank
Yes.
you. Before we open up to questions, I just wanted to remind commissioners about a process that I think I emailed people about today, but I think we have a lot to cover in each of these, and so probably the most efficient way to do this is after making a motion to, you know, approve the report, that we just go around the room and give commissioners an opportunity to each kind of give us whatever feedback or edits or suggestions that they might have. And I would ask that people limit the specific comments to changes that are of substance. And if you have like typos or grammatical suggestions or whatever, you can note that, but maybe send those to Commissioner Rasmussen or whoever the author of the report is later.
Yes.
Does that sound good? Is everyone okay with that?
These reports are lengthy, so it's very common for there to be, you know, typos and grammatical errors. And I recognize that there are several. So yes.
Great. So why don't you start by making a motion to approve the report?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 Camp Kemp inspection.
We have a second from Commissioner Bocanegra. We might not need it.
Don't need it.
Although in speaking with the clerk earlier today, he did mention that to be safe, we might want to get a second, but
You don't need a second because there are two people, at least two people on the committee. And the whole purpose of the second is to make sure there are at least two people who want to discuss the topic. So every parliamentary authority I know, and I know maybe 5, says you don't need a second if it's a committee report.
Yeah, I wish.
Or a nomination.
Sure. I wish my county attorney was here, but she's not present. But so in order for the whole entire board to say a unanimous vote, right, or disagree with the inspection, you know, that is taking a motion for the entire board. So if we're gonna have a first and a second, right, and then you're gonna have the entire board vote, you know, that's against the Brown Act. So, I mean, that's up to you. Chair.
Maybe just to be safe, let's record a second, whether, maybe it might be more than we need. All right, but anyway, Commissioner Bocanegra did speak up. So why don't we go around the room now? Let's just go one at a time. And I'll start on my left with Commissioner Ginevro. If you have any comments or suggestions.
No, it was very thorough. I was like, like every line that had like a question, like yes, no, and I like everything almost had like something. So I really appreciated that. A lot of information. So I have no feedback that besides that. My only other thing is that how are we going to kind of like track the recommendations? Because I know that there were a lot of recommendations for Camp. So are we going to track them? Are there some that are going to be higher priority, or how do you think that we'll go about that?
So typically in the report, you'll see it where it will say what last year's recommendations were, and then we follow up this year to see if they've been covered. So that'll continue. And Commissioner Wilson and I have also been asking probation if they might work with us to address them, like once they receive the report, if they could, like within 45 days, let us know the one that they've received it, they've acknowledged it, but then to have an action plan. Some of the things we may not be aware of their constraints, right? So we may have an idea that we think is fantastic, but it may not be feasible. So it's good to have this two-way conversation, right? So I think that's kind of how we're tracking it at this point. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the feedback.
All right, Commissioner Wilson, you're next in the circle.
Fabulous job. Pass.
No other edits or suggestions. All right, Commissioner Swope.
Well, you know you're gonna get something from me. But I do have to commend the committee. I think this is one of the most thorough reports we've ever had on Camp, and you raise really important issues that even if Camp closes, they're worth thinking about for other institutions in the county. I just wanted to make a couple of remarks about the food.
Yes.
Food has been a problem even before it went to the sheriff's department. I can tell you 10 years ago, we sat down and had lunch or dinner with the young people, and afterwards, half of it was in the slop to be thrown out. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a discussion with their nutritionist and said, it's all very well to say you're giving them the food that they need that has the correct nutrition, but if it doesn't get into their bellies, it ain't going to do them no good. So anyway, and the other thing is, I recently had 15 people that we took to dinner at Davino's in Belmont, and we had a 4-course meal for $76. 4 courses, including veal scallopini and swordfish and things like that. So for them not to be able to give these young people something that is edible is just, I can't even get my hands around it. I did have some questions. I thought that the staff were getting trauma-informed care because I've gone to trainings.
Do you mean training?
Training.
Yeah.
So that was the request. They couldn't remember the last time they had received it, and during our interviews, that was their request. Most of the issues around staffing, and that came from staff themselves.
And it came from both BHRS and staff.
Yes,
So they just haven't had any recently.
yes,
It's too long ago.
yes.
On page 15, well, that's a wording thing, forget it. On page 21, you comment that staff are having to donate the beauty products, the supplies for their beauty time on Saturday evenings. And it seems to me that the county ought to be providing whatever materials the young people need for their hair, because that's part of their care. And he said that this one young woman had to wear a mask while she was quarantined. If she was all alone and there was no other students, young youth in that area, why would she need a mask? That doesn't make any sense to me.
So Susan, she was alone when I met her,
Yeah.
but during her quarantine period, there was, I think at one point this year, we had up to 6 at one time. So
Yeah.
that could have been why.
On page 23, I just have a comment. Most of my, when I have are questions and comments, not corrections.
Okay,
But breakfast and lunch are at a reasonable time. Why can't they have dinner at a usual time? Part of the problem with incarceration is that you take somebody out of their normal life flow and you totally change it. So when they go back into their normal life, they're all bollocksed up. If you could at least have everything while they are incarcerated as close to the way it would be if they were at home, I think that the outcomes would be better. That's just my comment.
so I will add the recommendation. That was a recommendation for last year to move the dinner time. Camp actually eats later than the hall. I think the hall on Sundays even eats at like 3:45 or something. So I do know that the reason why it is the way it is for now is that that's like a mandated break for staff. And so it's scheduled around that. But that shouldn't be the reason. The kids go to bed hungry and they say so because they're eating too early. So if you have lunch at 12:30 and then you have dinner at 3:45 or 4 o'clock, that's certainly.
Yeah. And I was wondering, you say eat breakfast and lunch each cost $89.94 to deliver, whereas the food was only worth less than $5. What about dinner?
Well, we requested that data.
Mhm.
And I went all the way up the chain for the data and I was told that the county doesn't keep that data. It's not for snacks or dinner. The only thing I could think is that because we receive reimbursements for the school lunch program for breakfast and lunch, that maybe they only have that data for that. Maybe they've only had the breakdowns because they have to provide it. But that's just speculation on my part. I have requested it. You've got to wonder, are we spending over 200 a day? So yeah, so I hope that they can get that data together and provide it because we do need that. That's a huge missing piece. And when Commissioner Wilson and I met with the dietitian and the manager of the food nutrition program, he said that dinner is the only meal that they don't have to really conform to the lunch program requirements of sodium and sugar and calories.
More,
So-
it could be more appetizing.
Right, and so, that's another reason why we would want to know what that's costing.
Now, when they had a cook down at Camp Glenwood, the food down there was far superior to what they were getting at Camp or at YSC.
And it's the same man in charge, so.
Yeah, and he wants to come back. He told us he'd love to come back to the hall and prepare food for the children. He's Italian. He prepares food. That's what he does. That's how he shows his care and concern for his community.
I was curious about longevity pay. I know that you said it's what they would get after 5 years, but what does that actually mean?
Well, it means that
Bonus?
usually in union contracts, there's certain criteria. If you're bilingual or if you work a night shift, you get a differential, but some sort of a compensation, even if it's minimal, just to recognize that you're a valued employee. You've been here a long time. We don't want you to leave for better pay or working conditions elsewhere. It's just an incentive to stay and recognition for the folks who work so hard.
Almost there. Yeah. I think that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Swope. Commissioner Agarwal.
I actually do not have anything. I thought it was a fantastic report. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had it said it was around $89 per day per meal.
Yes, it is, and these numbers came from probation, so they're analysts. So it was $89.94.
like, do we have any idea or like where that money is going? I know like transportation from
Well,
like the.
I can get, the breakdown is attached to the report, but I can just verbally say, so food costs of the 1.75 million, $206,659.74 goes for food, the cost of food. 1,117,965.65 goes to staff. And other is $381.88, $381,088.97. That is considered other. That's the category they called other. I have to imagine that that would cover the cost of the trays, the cost of the van that transports them up, the cost of gas, saran wrap, maybe pots and pans. I mean, whatever the other is, that. So those are the three categories that they broke them down into: food, personnel, and other. And all of the data I was provided is attached to the report, and this data came from probation's analyst.
So would the costs be similar if they were like in-house, if they had a cook like on staff? Would that same like the salary for the cook come from this budget, or would it be a separate budget?
This is why I think we need the audit, because I looked back in the record trying to find data, and back in 2012, the Board of Supervisors was asked to take a look at the food situation. And switching over to the Sheriff's Department was actually something on there, and so they said it was a cost-saving measure. But from what I can see, there hasn't been any reduction. And knowing the folks that Melissa and I met, I can't imagine that you've got one gentleman delivering 5 days a week, and you've got a person who delivers on weekends, so 1.5, maybe 2, because you have vacation, whatever, sick time. And then you have the 2 folks down at the jail. I can't imagine that 4 people are making $1.117 million, almost $1,118,000. Even if you account for their pension and medical and workers' comp and dental, even if you account for all of that, that seems like a really big amount of money. And so I can't answer it. I don't think anybody really can. And so that was the intention for the audit. Like, how can we brainstorm and find a better way that costs less for the folks of San Mateo County who are paying the bill, and to improve the food for our kids.
And then I had one last question. I know the hall recently split off into 2 units again. Do we know which unit the girls who are at camp are going to to stay, or were going to, I guess? No, it's not.
It was changing from the first time we were there to the second time we were there. So there's been a lot of movement from the units. And the first time it changed because they had COVID and they had to keep them separate. And then I believe they were going to the Pine 4 unit, but I don't want to misstate. So I have to say, I don't know. But there's been a considerable movement. And when we were there last, there were 3 units open 2 weeks ago.
I think one of them was that they were sentenced and to serving their time, or their cases were complete. They were just receiving their treatment and rehabilitation, and they had a separate unit. But again, it just keeps changing, and it's hard to keep track of why they're changing. But they do have very good reason to be changing the unit, and they're always trying to find some sort of solution for whatever problem pops up.
Thank you.
Commissioner Huber-Levy.
Excellent report, so meticulous, so thorough. It may end up being some of an academic exercise, but it'll be applicable to another iteration at the camp, or certainly to youth services center as well, the same concerns. I did have a couple of comments which I provided to you already.
Yes.
And I thought, it was so well done.
Thank you.
Any typos, potential goals. Clearly, there was a lot of proofreading that went into it. And on the budget stuff, one of the comments that I provided to you too was just that I suspect that the mystery of cost accounting is at play here. I was a former accounting major, and you know, without getting too hung up on these very large numbers, I think the salient point that you raise is there's a lot of money going towards something that has been substandard forever. And it's time to make a change. It has a direct impact on the youth's health and their opportunity for rehabilitation. I think you've really brought that into sharp focus, and there's a great opportunity here to look further with an audit and have a good dialogue of what the options are. So thank you so much for all the work that you did on this. It's really commendable.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Boganera, you were on the committee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I wanted to follow up a couple of things that Joanna discussed in the presentation. These are very reasonable recommendations. A lot of work went into this inspection. A lot of dialogue between probation, as well as commissioners, as well as the clients that we're serving. And some of the recommendations, like the survey, that's a reasonable recommendation. I think that a survey, when a youth is receiving their conditions or who the probation officer is going to be, just provide them a quick survey just so we can capture data there that'll help us later on in inspections to improve or reimagine the juvenile system. The other thing I wanted to reiterate were the promotions for staff. You know, they have a very complicated job. They're wearing so many different hats. They're playing so many different roles. They're mentors, they're slash teachers, they're everything. And I think a promotion, the current model today really like alienates a lot of the staff that have lived experience, that have been there long term, that are single mothers, don't have the ability to go back to college and take on more debt or times from their family just for a promotion. I think that it's reasonable to say that maybe 10 years or 5 years of service to your community, to our next generation, should be the equivalent of a bachelor's degree, just so that there's some upward mobility for all of those community members who are providing this complicated service for our youth and have just been stagnated because of the inability to go back to college for a higher education. And then the other thing was the fence. The fence has been in this condition for 2 years. We got there. It's just a board covering a hole. And there's like almost not spikes, but there's places there that if someone were to fall on, they could get seriously hurt. And when we were there was a person actually walking through there, and then staff had reported that animals walked through there, and with the moisture, a piece of plywood isn't going to sustain the weight that maybe a deer away or a human being away. And so I think that we should like really focus on fixing that fence for sure. The other thing was the food. Again, everybody reiterated the same thing. It's alarming how much money we're spending on such poor quality food. And I think that this audit would really help us get into the details of how this $1.7 million is leading to such poor quality food. And I think, again, there has to be an explanation for that. And I'm looking forward to finding out how we can help with this audit and figure out how we can reimagine the food system. And then lastly, the the closure. I wanted to give credit to the probation department, Chief King in particular, for not moving to renew that Sonoma contract. They said that was a curb that they were taking, and they didn't move to renew that. I think because the community is really focused on how do we solve the problems with our youth in our community before we start trying to solve the rest of California's problems. And I think the chief recognized that, and I want to give him, I want to give him his props for making that move. And then finally, Camp, that cannot be a lost opportunity. We can't miss this opportunity to reimagine even how Camp has been used. I understand it's been focused on girls, but right now I think San Mateo is doing a very good job in moving to decarcerate and find alternatives for our young girls who continue to have the problems that they're encountering out there in the community. But this is an opportunity to also change how we look at the boys, how we provide spaces for them, especially during the reintegration process back into our communities. Being long-term, and I'll use the word cell. I don't like the word room, and I know the word cage is inflammatory, so I'll respect everyone in that sense and say that these cells can't be a place where our youth reintegrate from. It doesn't work for adults. There's so many studies on recidivism that we know when you open that door, people are just gonna do their best with what they know. And if that is all they know, it's kind of scary that they're gonna reintegrate into our communities coming from such a small confined quarters such as what we have there in the hall. But overall, this inspection, there was a lot of work, a lot of time. I want to thank again the probation department for collaborating with us and for being open and feeling safe enough to advocate for change within the probation department by confiding in us and trusting in us that we would bring it to this public space here and ask that our probation officers be acknowledged and have the ability to promote, just like some youngster that comes in with a master's degree and they see them surpass, they should have the same opportunity with time invested into our communities. That'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bocanegra. Commissioner Sophic-Nori.
Yeah, I'm happy to go next. I really enjoyed reading the report too. The only question I kind of had was about the safety hazard. So like, did they explain why when they made the hole in 2021 to repair the pipe, the hole wasn't filled then, or?
No, they did not.
There's been a work order, they said, for a couple of years, just something that's been, it's just been delayed. And it might be, I'm not sure if there's gas lines there or what it is, but a piece of plywood over such a hole that big, and you can see the pictures in there. It's pretty scary. Just can't even imagine if it's dark and someone walks through there, what the possibilities are.
I did the inspection of Kemp last year, and the reason why the hole was open in the first place was to repair that pipe.
Yeah.
But then, and I believe the pipe, I can't remember, but I believe the pipe is a water pipe. But the but there being no, and also the fence was kind of like taken off of its hinges in order to get access to that. But then it hasn't been put back, right? And it's supposed to be a facility that's not secure, it's closed, and doesn't make any sense to me either, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
families.
No,
Commissioner Nori, did you have anything else?
No, I think that was my main question. So thank you.
So we're hoping that if we elevate it, if we lift that up and say, hey, we've got something going on, that maybe we could get Public Works out there to fix it, because we certainly don't want anybody to get hurt.
Okay, Commissioner Liu, it's noted you're not voting, but did you have comments or questions on the report since you're on the Zoom?
You can count on it, Monroe. Yes,
Okay.
I have questions. Is it okay to get started?
Yes.
Not as many as Susan, but I have questions. Okay, so first I had a question on the training at Camp. So I was just wondering if there are certificates or some sort of record on what probation staff at Camp and Juvenile Hall are trained in. Because I want to make sure that because I thought trauma-informed was a must-have, right? So I also want to make sure there's cultural responsiveness, cultural awareness, right? There's mental health first aid. There's things like that are added onto the training that new staff get and current staff are up to date on.
I don't know if there's a certificate that they receive. I'm sure there's documentation that they've had their training on the issue. I'm not sure if there's some sort of certificate that they receive of completion after each training.
No, and I do know that I asked whether or not that was something that was considered when they did evaluations, annual evaluations, and employees also sit down each year and make goals for the coming year. And I asked if trauma-informed approaches and training was taken into consideration whether or not, let's say the training was optional. Maybe there's a foundational training they must take, but additional training, if that was optional, if that's something that's taken into account when staff is evaluated, and they said no. So that's where that recommendation came in for adding that to that, because it is valuable and it should be considered.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that this points out, not so much directly for this inspection report, is if there's this level of uncertainty about trauma-informed training, providing trauma-informed care, then that means it isn't required, right? And the question is, at the state or county level, how can we make sure that anyone who encounters our kids through probation in our juvenile system are trauma-informed trained and ACEs identifying and things like that, right? But that's a broader state policy discussion. But I do have my next question about the rape, trauma, and substance abuse services. So what was the extent of that? Was that just something that happens locally? Why? Well, it was discontinued because there weren't enough people, or they didn't see the need for it, right?
My understanding is that we've never offered substance abuse treatment services. We have offered NA and AA meetings. Now, anyone who's ever attended or knows about that knows that that's more of a group setting where people share and they offer support, fellowship to keep their sobriety. But as far as education, prevention, actual treatment, I don't know that we've had that. And the rape trauma services contract was ended because the population. We went months the year before this, where there was no children there at all, and so the contract could not be sustained. I think going forward, we're going to be at both facilities. I think we're going to be moving towards a, like a pay for service type thing, and no more. It's a contract for 30 kids, and we're going to do this. It's going to be individual. Hey, we're going to set this amount for these particular services. It's the only way that we could truly continue to keep our service providers and meet the needs of the kids.
Yeah, and I think that it was a few months or maybe last year. It was a while ago that Chief Keen attended our meeting, and I believe this question was raised. And I think his response was that, yes, we have a certain amount of money, but the issue sometimes is the size of our population and being able to get these CDOs to offer these services. So I'm wondering if we can possibly circle back about specifically the rape and trauma services, and also potentially having substance abuse treatment. But I think the same thing applies for food. There are a lot of questions about food. And we were talking about food earlier in the year, and I think a bit last year too. And I anticipate that we will be talking about it moving forward. But I do have a question about the audit. How would that happen? Would it be something that Chief Keen just orders on his own, or will it have to go through the Board of Supervisors, or what's the procedure for that?
Well, we wouldn't really dictate how it was done. We just say that we just present that there's a need for it, and how they choose to do it and what those parameters are. If we're invited to the table to offer feedback, that'd be wonderful. But that's really for them to do, right? That's for them to do. We're just saying this is needed. We need to look at this. And if nothing gets done and it shows up in the report next year under the no action items, then maybe that's where we would say, okay, how can we get more information? How can we as a body try and get more information on how to fix it?
Mm-hmm. So that's about it, but I do want to say that I think you guys did a fantastic job. It's such a bummer that the girls had COVID and you weren't able to interview both of them after, but hopefully we can just not keep tabs, but stay connected to the girls there. And I think you guys did an excellent job, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Liu. I think that brings it around to me. But before I offer a couple of comments and suggestions, just to recap the input that has been received so far. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I heard anyone say we should change this in the report, edit, other than maybe there are some typos or grammatical. We had comments and questions, but did anyone have any specific changes to offer in the report they want to see before we vote? Okay.
I mean, I did provide some comments prior.
Were they like sort of typo and grammatical kind of stuff?
was about where the data.
No, the judicial inquiry.
Oh, that was just referencing the fact when we met with the dietitian that they told us that the judge had inquired.
Yeah, I just,
The
the
judge-
judge
yeah.
used the right term so that it's, a judicial inquiry has a kind of a connotation of an official inquiry that's appointed by the government. So just maybe reword that so it's, just put it in layman's. Inquired.
The judge inquired as opposed to a judicial inquiry. Or judicial, so it's a,
We wanna
it's
see
just
a
a
copy.
change of the
Okay.
phrase to make
Okay.
it more clear.
Okay.
Small.
Okay.
To me, when a
So-
judge inquires, that's a
Yeah,
judicial
it just-
inquiry.
No, there's a formal
Okay, I
version
get
and
it.
there's
I get
a-
it. Thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, so I had one comment and one suggested change and then one question.
Okay.
I wanted to just echo what everyone has said about the recommendation on if the facility is not going to be used for girls, then looking at possible other uses. I just want to repeat, I've been a big advocate for finding a way to have a boys camp in the county, and so I just wanted to applaud that recommendation and that suggestion. My suggestion for an actual change is on page 4 in the report. Sorry, let me pull it up. At point 6, there's an all caps, much less. Surely the food can be provided for much less.
Okay, tone it down.
And my suggestion was just until we do the audit and actually get in there and try to figure out the costs, maybe we could just change the tone of that section.
Okay, and what would you
Just-
propose?
Just lowercase?
I will leave maybe lowercase, maybe cross out the
Certainly.
definitely and also the astronomical that's later in the
Okay.
in the paragraph. Those would be my suggestions.
Okay.
Is just
Noted.
take a little more humble approach given accounting training
Okay.
and so on.
I mean, regardless of how that figure came up, like maybe if we understood it in terms of cost accounting, we'd be like, okay, that's just how they're allocating the cost. But the point being, there still should be excellent food.
It does, I will agree, it seems really high.
Astronomical. Yeah.
Really high. I mean, like, they could order, DoorDash every day for less, right? So I agree, but yeah, I would
Okay,
just
all right.
tone it down a little in that
Okay.
section. That's my suggested
And
change.
that was on page 4.
That is page 4, it's point 6, there's a paragraph there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
And
and then,
Monroe, if I may, through the chair, I do have one more suggestion for recommendation 8, staff training. I was wondering if
What
Johanna
page are you on?
can.
Wesley,
I'm
what page?
sorry? Let's see, page 5.
Yeah.
And I know it's elaborated on, but it would be nice if you can also request that the trainings be recorded somewhere.
Oh, okay.
And that we have access to that, not just that they get the training, but that we have a general understanding of how they're trained.
Like a log, like a training log.
Yeah. I think it does exist, but I might as well put it in the recommendation. I agree.
I thought they had a certain number of required hours every single
They
year.
They do, but they also
So
can
they
take,
could give you
you can also take optional trainings, and I believe those are put in their file, but might as well recommend that.
Only some things like the Prison Rape Elimination Act, it's required to have annual training, but other things are like a hodgepodge, like a buffet of training, 40 hours for senior staff and 25 hours for junior staff.
So that's actually a good segue to my question, Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
At the beginning of this year, we formed a committee to look at sexual abuse prevention policies, procedures, education for staff and so on. And I don't think I saw anything in the report about sexual abuse prevention. That was something we had talked about maybe incorporating into inspection reports. And certainly for girls camp, it seems like a relevant topic. So my question for you is that something that you discussed, like policy and procedure for preventing sexual abuse or education that staff or residents might be getting? Was sexual abuse prevention part of the inspection?
It was, and every time I ask a question about sexual abuse, I'm referred to Chief Key.
Mm.
But there are posters up now, ombudsman's posters, and they're in English and Spanish. There's a sexual abuse prevention, that way.
Yeah.
The committee is eventually going to be issuing a report on that.
Right.
And that is something that I intended to cover in the Youth Services Center inspection. I did, I think it's in Title 15. It actually requires that when there's a lawsuit filed that the BSCC be notified. And I did inquire as to whether or not that had taken place, that notification.
Mhm.
And I was told to ask Chief Keen. So I have not received any information as to that. But what would you like me to add here, Martha?
I guess I would leave it at your discretion, like where to put it or what exactly to add, but it just seems like a topic that you might want to add somewhere to the report. And even if you just note that we inquired about this,
Okay.
but weren't able to get any more information, I think it would be worthwhile, since it's an important sort of open piece of business for the commission. And we said we wanted to try to incorporate that into inspection reports.
So in the report, there's that one question about the BSCC reporting of sexual lawsuits. There is that one question. Maybe I can add a second on there. Maybe I can make reference to the posters and maybe just make reference that I was referred to the chief of probation for additional information.
I trust you to figure out
Okay.
where to put it.
Okay.
My like ask is just that there
It'd be
be
there.
something there, yeah.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Good catch.
And are we following those sexual abuse lawsuits, settlements, or any movement on those?
Different topic, which given the hour, I would say let's not get into right now because we
One thing at a
have
time.
other business we got to get to. All right, so Commissioner Rasmussen, you made the motion to approve this report, so
Okay, so I'd
maybe
like
you
to,
could amend the motion
I'd
to
like
take
to,
those things into account. Yeah.
okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the camp annual inspection for the 2022-2023 cycle with the amendments to remove the word judge's inquiry and rephrase that, to change the dinner time, to tone down 0.6, to ask for a training log or to record training, and then to add the sexual abuse prevention section.
I second it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson.
So,
The motion has been amended.
right, so the second was actually done by Commissioner Bocanegra. So
Commissioner Bocanegra should resecond.
then
I
you should.
retract my second.
And I follow up with the second.
Okay, thank you. Members of the public, if you wish to comment on this motion and also on the presentation for item 4B, please raise your hand in Zoom. I do have one hand raised by Nancy Goodman and another hand raised. So Nancy, I'll give you 2 minutes if you could please proceed, and then I'll show the timer.
Thanks so much. So I'm Nancy Goodman. I live in Redwood City. I'm within our care. Thank you for this thorough report. I am shocked that we're spending $1.7 million for food that gets thrown away. So I wanted to, as a member of the public, support your request to terminate the food service contract with the sheriff and to audit it and to resume food service at Juvenile Hall. And I also just wanted to also support, as a member of the public, your recommendation that if Camp is closed, to either use it as a boys' camp or as a substance abuse treatment center, both of which are needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy. Our next speaker will be Kate Heister. Kate, you'll have 2 minutes, so please proceed.
Hey everyone. So this is going to sound a little bit redundant, but I'm Kate Heister. I'm with Fresh Lifelines for Youth. First, just wanted to really appreciate the report. I think just over the past couple of years, really seen, so much effort and thought put into these reports, and I appreciate that direction that you all have taken. And also want to support both the audit of the food. It's awesome that we finally have some numbers behind it, and things that we've kind of known all along to have some real like data is amazing. And similarly for Camp Kemp to really ensure that we're making use of the facilities that we have, having seen what happened with Glenwood. I'm really concerned about the closing of Camp Kemp, and that we don't use it for something productive. So I also support those recommendations around repurposing it if that's the direction it needs to go. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, I'll make a last call for folks to raise their hand on Zoom.
I see one more.
Okay, that's right. Clara Jekyll, you'll have 2 minutes, so please proceed.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Claire Jekyll. I'm a resident of Redwood City, and I just want to basically echo and add my voice to what this previous speaker said and what the report said, that it'd be really good to have food that the children, the youth in our care will eat, and also that the great setting and the resources that have gone into building up Camp Kemp not be wasted, and then it be used to either for boys or for the substance abuse treatment. So that would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. I don't see any other hands raised on Zoom. Any members of the public from this room that want to speak up? Yes. If you could please state your name for the record.
My name is Bill Newell. I live in Redwood City. I too have concerns about the conditions that the male youth have had to endure as they're institutionalized, as they're incarcerated. I think it's long overdue that they be living be housed in a much more humane condition. I think there has to be things addressed, like each one of them being able to have and feel some privacy in their essential home that they have, whatever it may be. But it's very clear that just a few pictures I saw of Kemp, it's a big improvement from what there is now for the males, and the fact that it's not going to continue from what I can see being utilized by the girls. It makes little sense to me that a facility like that would sit idle while you have a number of juvenile boys being incarcerated at house. Really inappropriate, substandard, I think, facilities. I would also like to echo but reiterate the point about meals and food that is being provided to the juvenile youth. From everything I can hear, it's been inadequate, and as a taxpayer, I have a big concern, as Ms. Goodman pointed out. So I want to also reinforce that point. And I think this may not go to Ms. Rasmussen's report per se, but I think in general, we need to take a look at just the conditions in general of how our juvenile youth, the boys are being treated, the conditions under which they have to live day to day. And if we're going to really be concerned about positive rehabilitation and being able to be successful when they leave and go to the community, we have to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. No other comments, Mr. Chair, so back to you for the motion.
Great, thank you, everyone, and thank you for the discussion and the thorough report. Why don't we move to a vote to approve or to pass the motion as Commissioner Rasmussen explained to us with those other changes. I think we can do a voice vote on this. All those in favor of approving the report as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. The motion passes. unanimously. The report is approved. We're going to keep moving along since the hour is getting a little late. And I believe that, well, section 4C of the agenda is just to provide a quick update on any inspections that are not on the agenda for tonight. Commissioner Rasmussen, you have that item. Did you want to provide any other update, or should we move right on to the education?
I do not believe, I think the only outstanding inspection will be next month for the juvenile hall. And so that's, all the inspections have been completed, the data has been collected, and now it's just a matter of drafting that report. That report, I believe, is 90 some odd pages long right now, so it'll be considerable. I would just give a shout out to please check your email for the next meeting so we can have another discussion like we did tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you maybe, if there's anyone wants to make public comment on just that short update?
Sure. Members of the public, if you wish to comment on item 4C, other inspection updates, please raise your hand in Zoom. Okay, no hands are raised. Anyone from this room? Okay, none.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to section 5 of our agenda, we have a report on the school at Hillcrest and Kemp from Commissioner Wilson. That's 5A. And we also have a report from a committee that was looking at educational testing and progress, which is referred to in the first report. So Commissioner Wilson, I don't know if you want to do these together or separate, or how do you want to do it?
You know what? That's so why don't we do the testing project report first? Yeah,
okay.
That provides context, because it certainly provided context for me. So let's see. So Maya Nori and I, with the assistance of Steve Grieve and 2 community members who are professional statisticians, one of whom is really she does a program evaluation for the Veterans Administration program on the federal level, assisted us. We looked at data for long-term students. Long-term students are kids who are in detention for 90 or more days. Actually, Maya, I'm talking, but would you like to go over this?
I think you have it.
Okay.
Step it, but.
Okay, so the genesis of this was multifold, and most people know this, but there's no public reporting, and there hasn't been public reporting from San Mateo County Office of Education, although it's been a request of inspectors for the last 3 years at least. And they are required by Title I, which is a federal program for neglected and delinquent youth. There's funding attached to it. Title I requires that they test all youth at intake and test youth after 90 days who qualify as long-term and have been in detention after 90 days. So we looked at 5 years of data, and the 5 years of data was actually 2 different data sets. One data set was 3 years and one was 5 years. And that happened because the initial results were negative, and I wanted to make sure that there were enough discrete points of data so that the outcomes could be somewhat valid. And so they gave us additional. So anyway, long-term students, there are quite a number of them. We have 54 in the last 3 years. The typical length, and by that I mean the median, was 1.25 years. So half of the students are there for less. Of the students who are there for 90 days, half of them are for less than 1.25 years, and half of them are more than 1.25 years. And I mentioned at the last meeting, you can really see some of these students' life histories in the tests, the number of times they've been tested and the different locations they've been tested. So maybe you see a juvenile hall and then a gateway and then a juvenile hall, Canyon Oaks, and back to juvenile hall. You sort of start to see what this child's experience has been educationally. The typical skill levels in math are between 4th and 5th grade, and reading is 6th grade. That's the median at any one point in time. The progress that youth are demonstrating in reading is 14 weeks per year. That's not 1 year and 14 weeks per year. That's 14 weeks per year. So what that means is when you compare our students against the average student who's not detained, that average student has been in school for 1 week and made 1 year's progress they've been in school for 1 year and they've made 1 year's progress during that 1 year. Our students are making 14 weeks progress during that same 1 year.
Melissa?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but just the 14 weeks, what is the academic school year that we're comparing that to?
That's an excellent question. So the norms tables are based on 9 months, but they tell how many points you have to jump to get to the next year. And so we took that and we divided that by 12. So we took a 9-month grid and made it into a 12-month grid, but it works.
Okay.
Is the right way to read this like 14 over 52? So it's sort of the equivalent of making 28% of progress?
Yes, yes.
Basically.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. The progress wasn't, nobody was progressing at such a remarkable rate that anything is worth saying, except for that youth with English language learner youth with IEPs were doing better than youth who are just English language learners. That was like the most dramatic difference. And I felt like in the data, a little note of, are we doing enough for English language learners was one of the takeaways. Next slide. So this is obviously a very distressing result. And I have spent the last many months saying, well, why? What is this really about? Okay, and it could be about many individual or intersecting factors. So one is it a problem with the test? Some youth are poor test takers. A detention environment is not a great environment in which to take a test. Student engagement may be low. And we went through and sorted for duration of test time, and we're able to find that when students took more than 40 minutes on a test, we saw really significant reading progress and on some math progress. So again, the math students are still falling a half a year behind, but the reading students are making up for compared to their the normal youth. The second question is, well, is it a problem with the school? Is the school not doing everything that it needs to deliver the promise of education for these youth? And so that was part on my mind when we were doing the educational inspection. So I'll get to that. Is there a problem with the broader learning environment? So is this a facility that's centered around education? And if it is, how is that? And if it's not, what would it need to look like? And Ruchi's going to be presenting on this as well as the educational inspection report. But if we were to say that this is a educational environment, the school day might be longer. Our kids get 60% of the education that a child in a non-court school gets.
In terms of hours.
In terms of hours, including that it's a 12-month cycle versus 9-month cycle. So you often hear people say, yeah, but they go to school 12 months, so it's okay that they only go to school for 4 hours a day, when their peers are going to school for 6.5 or 7.5 hours a day. And so like time in the desk matters. Yeah.
Which is interesting because they're actually supposed to be, they're expecting like that they jump ahead like multiple grade levels. I'm not sure what the exact estimate is that they want per year,
well, I'll talk about that
Yeah,
later.
okay.
But, right, you can't expect a better outcome with less input, right? And then, is it a failure to thrive, right? So is a detention facility such a toxic place that you can't expect learning to happen there? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think it has to be asked. And then, are these students less able to learn? And that's a possibility as well. But I don't think we can just say that, it's the kids who aren't able to learn. We have to look at the whole system.
Can I just make a comment, but
Yeah.
the term able
Right.
is maybe problematic.
Way, yeah.
Another way to put it, and I think this is what you mean, might be that, you know, if you haven't dealt with some of your mental health issues, for example, first, then it's very difficult for you to learn. Is that kind of what you mean?
I actually
Less able to learn?
I was actually thinking of, I've sat in court and heard, children who have been beaten in the head, and it's resulted in cognitive impairment.
Okay,
So we
And
call
so-
that learning differences in San Francisco, we call that learning, we just put in the IEP learning differences.
Okay. I think we know what you
Very
mean.
well-
Yeah, I was just
well made.
curious about the choice of words.
Yeah. So on this slide, first of all, I found an error in the report this morning. I had a NA next to the child who had a certificate of completion. There are test scores, so I filled that test score in. The graduates of the program, I think what's important on this chart, I think this chart has some power in it, is that you can see this is, for those of you who are familiar with percentiles, this is the percentile at which they're performing at the 12th grade. This is the highest level that they've ever tested. So because students' test results were erratic, I thought, well, what's the best guess about this child's skill level? And so you'll see, you'll see for this child, they were tested 5 times. The highest they were ever able to score in 5 tests was at the 3rd grade level.
And they're graduating
And they graduated.
from high school.
Yes. Test 3 times, highest was at the 5th grade level. These are all youth, except for the certificate of completion. All of them have a diploma from this school. The other thing that this shows is just, again, like the length of time the kids are in detention. So, I think that it's easy to think that the school is a pass-through situation, but it's not a pass-through situation for the kids that we probably should be most worried about, where most investment needs to take place. The other thing this illustrates is just testing was not done consistently. So we had a graduate who had no test history at all. Next slide.
Melissa, when you say pass-through situation, what do you mean by that?
I mean that so detention is supposed to be temporary, and often when, this is what I've heard from members of the Board of Education, when they say, well, what about the youth who are there for longer periods of time? Are we meeting their needs? The response, as I understand it, is, oh, most youth aren't at the court school for very long. It's really just a very temporary situation. That's what I meant by pass.
So they're just flowing through and going back.
Yeah.
It's just keeping them moving along.
Moving along, pushing them forward, rather than saying, we are responsible for these children's.
We're the
full-
opportunity
This
to
is it.
turn things around.
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason I came to understand why San Mateo County Office of Ed was probably reluctant to share the test scores is that the testing protocol's been really poor. So only 53% of long-term youth were tested. Many of the tests, when a test was, there were indicators of when a test should be re-proctored because it was a rapid guessing percentage was too high, or and those retests were not being done. the biggest, not the biggest, something that was surprising to me is that even the goal, the learning goal was 0.1 for every 90 days in detention, but the interval between grades changed. So it's 16 points to move from first, don't quote me on this, but let's pretend it's 16 points to move from grade 1 to grade 2, and then 10 points from grade 2 to 3, and 8 points from 3 to 4, and 4 points from 4 to 5. Anyway, their score only works if you're scoring above the 7th grade level. Thank you, Susan. So if you were to look on page 13, this is just a sample chart for reading of how many points it takes to move to the next level. And as an example, it takes at least 5.68 points to move from level 5 to level 6. So a goal of one point per quarter, which would be the same thing as 4 points per year, with the reality that you need that child to get 5.68 points per year, like, doesn't reconcile at all, like, at all. So I think that's it on this page, and there may not be anything else.
So how do they figure this?
How does this? Okay, so the creators of the test do norms data, and they have come up with this.
So you need a huge amount of points between 1 and 2, and 2 and 3, but after that it goes down exponentially to where you need only a quarter of a point to go from 11 to 12.
Yes, you need a quarter of a point to move from 11 to 12.
That doesn't make sense.
It's some kind of sliding scale that says that there's the incremental amount you need to move on this.
The good news, Susan, is the test that they're using, and they're thinking about replacing the test that they're using, but the test they're using is highly researched. It's highly validated.
This is the map test?
No. Oh yeah, this is the map test. Yeah. And this, I don't think they're happy with the map test, but if they're going to change it, they should be changing it for something that's equally validated. And I worry, and that I go on in here to say, I worry that Edgenuity's in-house test is not a standardized test.
Commissioner Wilson, you're finished with your slides on the testing report. Is there sort of a, I don't know, maybe concluding thoughts on the testing report you want to leave us with before we start peppering you with questions about it?
Well,
because our goal here,
the San Mateo County Office of Ed is going to present in January, so it's retooled. So I think something that's really important to realize is that there's a completely new administrative team at San Mateo County Office of Education and in school leadership, completely new. So the sins of the past are not those of the present players in terms of setting goals, etc. They are also going to come in January and present their pilot approach that they've been trying this first semester, fall 2023. They're going to be presenting that to us in January with those outcomes. And I guess I'll just ask us to be critical thinkers when we look at what they're proposing. I could not get for either the school inspection or for this a written statement of what that planned protocol is, but I have a sense for it based on our conversations. Are there any big takeaways? I mean, we got to do better testing, proctoring the tests, and then using the information to guide the instruction.
We don't have data we can't measure.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, I can't see who's attending. I don't know if we have the whole list of attendees. Is there someone from the County Office of Education attending today?
I think there is. So I'm looking at the list.
I don't see anyone.
No, yeah.
So the committee is Commissioner Norrie, Commissioner Wilson,
and
prospective Commissioner Grebe. Do you all have a motion for for the commission. Is there something that we want to vote on tonight?
Approval of the report.
Adopt the report as the commission. You want to restate it?
I move that we adopt the report as a official commission publication.
You did that second.
Yes, Commissioner Norrie's seconds. Okay, and let's maybe go around like we did with the previous report, because I'm sure the commissioners have questions. Commissioner Swope, do you want to start, or do you want us to
That's
start with
okay.
somebody else?
I was curious as to how this compares with the students in their regular middle and high schools. Are they doing what we think they should be doing in
What?
terms of achievement?
You mean date rate or who?
No, I mean, how do
Oh,
these youth in the court and community schools
right.
compare to the ones who are in?
So, okay, so this is compared to national norms. Students in California do a little less well than national norms. So we could compare it to California norms. I don't have that information. The test score also may have provided, and this is my guess about where that 1.1% improvement goal came from, is I believe what could have happened is that the test proctor said, for students like yours, you can expect +1 point of improvement. And I think that that's where this, why euphemistically called modest goal came from, was from the test proctor. That is available, that's available to San Mateo County Office of Ed. It's not available to me.
Huh. Okay.
So are you basically asking Commissioner Swope, like,
How far behind are
graduates from
they?
regular someone who graduates from regular high school, are they all, is the median 12th grade reading level or
I think
12th
she's
grade math?
asking more of a brass tacks question.
Yes.
They're about 4 years behind grade level.
But how about
Stay.
those in the regular high schools?
Those
Are
kids
are they at grade level when they graduate? Are they at 12th grade level when they graduate?
So
Yeah, because
50% at the 50th percentile, they are at 12th grade level
in the regular high school.
in a regular high school.
Median is 12th grade level when they
The
graduate.
mean and the median for the norms is 12th grade level.
Yeah.
In regular schools, I think I should show you the norms table, and then you can really enjoy yourself.
The other things were already brought up that I had on that part of the report.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Swope.
So,
yes.
We're doing 5B, right? Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, 5B right now. Why don't we go this way? Commissioner Ginevra, did you have any questions about the testing report?
Yes, I was wondering, I'm assuming that this is all more like quantified information, so qualified. So did you have any opportunity like throughout this process to do any, I know that we have the issue with interviewing students, but did you have any like, I'm assuming no, because
we had no student contact.
And I'm sure like a lot of like same like for us, like a lot of like the holes would be filled in like if we had that. And so I think you actually just answered my question. I was wondering if the table was just for like the points table was just for the students that were in detention. But so this is
norms.
So this is forever. This is like for
of what it takes to move from one grade to the next.
Yeah. So
that's national norms.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Anyways, Commissioner Liu, why don't we go with you next? Did you have any
Thank you, Monreal.
comments on this report?
I actually have no questions, but Melissa, I'll email you about something else when I have time. Thanks.
All right. I'm gonna skip me and go last. I'll go last. Commissioner Norrie, did you have any questions or comments on the testing report?
Oh, no, I mean, the only kind of question related to students I had was like, was there any tracking of how much they were improving before that they came to the hall? Like if that was somewhat, or if they were like struggling with school?
Yeah, I don't believe that San Mateo County Office of Education has that information unless they were a student at San Mateo County Office of Education.
And then I guess like after, I mean, I guess we were tracking people who graduated high school. I would be curious, like, because even among that, it seemed like there was a big gap in like the performance. There was at least one student who was at a 12th grade level for reading and math. So like, I guess the way differentiation happens, because what you want to teach them might be completely different than how you teach someone at a third grade reading level. At least what I always heard from students was a sense that when they return, if they return to their regular schools, they just wouldn't be prepared because the rigor at the court school was nowhere near what they would experience at a regular high school. Thank you. Yeah, that was all I had.
Yeah, this is alarming, and no doubt it's a complex problem, right? Like right now, for our long-term kids, I think there's only one that doesn't have an IEP, right? And so it's complex because oftentimes the kids in the hall, their parents don't know how to advocate, may not know how to participate in an IEP. These kids are so far, have basically gotten lost, right? And they don't have advocates to help them and their parents to get back on track. So I think that's something that's desperately needed. I am concerned because we have an audience, literally a captivated audience. I mean, they are forced to go to school every day. I mean, barring that they're sick or have COVID.
But they're not.
So tell me about that.
So there's an issue with chronic absenteeism, so truancy. Kids are truant from the court schools. There's also an issue with suspensions. And that combined with, learning outcomes means that the school to prison pipeline is happening in the court school. Because all of the things that we associate with the school to prison pipeline are continuing there, even though it is their best opportunity to change things around, especially for long-term youth.
Do you know what % are chronically absent or considered chronically absent?
Off the top of my head, I believe it's 15%.
Maybe that's something we could.
It's in the public reporting.
I would think that this would be something that could be added to the court report. That maybe Your Honor would be interested in knowing how many days they missed in school.
Yeah.
Maybe just a standard question on the court report so we can catch this.
And it's not all kids, but so 15% of chronic truancy, that's really one kid, two kids. It's not this huge issue, but for that one child it is.
This is while they're in detention.
In detention, they choose not to go to school.
Yeah.
They can choose.
And they can choose, apparently.
So just to add, in our behavioral summary reports that we get for our youth that are in therapeutic detention, they do comment on how they're doing in school. So we do get those reports. Every now and then you have a youth that just refuses to go to school, doesn't want to go to school. And all we can do is try to encourage that youth to go to school. We do our best. Yeah. It's rare. Most of the kids go to school. And we do have that information in the behavioral summary reports that I get just before each court session.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Commissioner Ross, is there any other?
No, that's it. That's it. And if there's any subcommittee that's going to be formed to track this or to try and change this, count me in.
Commissioner Bocanegra.
Yeah, the stats there, the data that you provided are definitely alarming in that math, fifth grade level math. It's hard for me to understand that because most of the youth love school. They want more school. They're begging Your Honor Elizadi for more time to attend college. So, and we have some youth that are in college right now that are doing exceptionally well. So it's kind of alarming to see these numbers and then going in there watching these kids progress educationally in an environment like you're describing right here. But
our kids, to me, our kids' best chance at success is to graduate and to get to community college, where the community college is very experienced leveling up kids. And so if they have the support to succeed through Project Change, still while in detention, because that's their best opportunity.
Yeah. But other than that, that's what I have to add. And again, I'd like to be a part of a subcommittee if there's one created on this, because I think that's something that we've been advocating for us, even trades programs. And many of these youth, especially our long-termers, they are in hot pursuit of education. Like they are always asking more. And so if they want more, and then we're seeing these numbers, this is a good opportunity for us to fill that fragmented service and try to empower them as much as we can. But yeah, most of the kids that we're working with, we see them excelling in school. So thank you for that, Melissa.
I just wanted to say that I don't know if anyone else could have done this. Thank you so much, you and your team, for tackling this incredibly complex challenge. I mean, I was reading through this and I just was blown away with the level of detail and, you know, again, that's such a meticulous job in giving all the backup and all your citations and the helpful charts. And I mean, I feel like I've learned so much. So thank you. I can't imagine, you know, without having your background in education, to be able to really understand enough to know what to ask for. Thank you.
My degrees in one of my degrees is in psychology, and then I have a master's in education. And I had a reading program. I taught reading, and I did my own study on myself. So, right? Because you can't teach without finding out if you're being effective. So this was a, you know, much bigger effort than that, but it wasn't an unfamiliar path to take, you know.
So I mean, the thing that just jumped out at me was, you know, not that individuals have difficulties or some, you know, choose not to engage with the opportunities they have, but that kids are being graduated when they have a third grade or a fifth grade level in something like that, kind of makes a mockery of the education that we're supposed to be providing.
So this is about sort of California politics around graduation, and what was happening was that too many kids were not graduating from California high schools. And so and specifically foster children and detained youth. So they passed a law called AB 167, and then they updated it with AB 216. Don't know if that, and it provided a pathway to graduation. And I don't know if these graduates used AB 167 as their pathway to graduate, but basically it lets a child who's been in the under 300 or 600 court system meet the minimum requirements from the state of California, which is 120 credits.
I remember you saying that, you spelled that out here.
Yeah, okay.
But doesn't that mean they still have to have a 12th grade level? Like maybe less hours, but.
Yeah, well, also California has social promotion. It's really hard. It's really hard. It's like really not clear, because we know that having a diploma, even without good skills, is better than having no skills and no diploma. Like, like it's a no-win situation. Right. With the goal being both diploma and skills.
Right. The other thing that jumped out at me is the fact that there was tutoring pre-COVID, and now there isn't tutoring. And I remember when I did have the opportunity to work with you on the education inspection in my first year as a commissioner and did interview youth, one of the things that they were asking for was tutoring.
Yeah.
They said they were having trouble, and some of their classmates were having trouble with math, and there would be a level of frustration that would come out, and everything would fall apart, and the class would be dismissed because there would be behavioral issues, and either because the teacher was getting frustrated or the kids were getting frustrated. And the youth that I spoke to said, we just feel like we don't need it in the classroom. We need more help. We would like to have like one-on-one help. And so I just made me think that that's something that we really need to advocate for, is to ensure that these kids who are interested in being engaged have that one-on-one support.
I think it's very possible that these young people that are in the hall, before they got in the hall, they were suspended numerous times, and each time you take a child out of their classroom, they're going to fall behind. So they keep falling farther and farther behind. And the more behind they get, the more frustrated they get, and they decide, I can't do this, and they just give up. And that's exactly what we don't want to happen.
I mean, the biggest argument against incarceration is what it does to a student's academic progress.
I think there's that, human nature when you're ashamed of something, when you feel that you're not good at something, there's a behavioral response to that, and some of it can be acting out, just covering up the feeling of inadequacy.
So my first year teaching, I was given a very difficult classroom, and whenever I asked them to read, fights would break out in my class. And about after 4 months, I finally went, wait a second, these kids can't read. They're hitting each other because they can't read, because I'm asking them to do something impossible for them. How
creating
I'm shaming them. I'm shaming them, and they're being diversionary. So
You changed gears.
I changed gears, yes.
Commissioner Nori, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, talking about like the graduation and how students are graduating at like 5th grade and 6th grade, like reading levels and math levels. I don't think this is a new issue, especially for California, because currently the LA juvenile system, I guess, is facing a similar issue, and they were also sued for it like 10 years ago. So I think I talked to Melissa about this, about the possibility of like our hall getting sued for a similar thing where they're graduating youth at really low reading levels. But yeah, I just thought that was an interesting continuation the past like 10 years.
Commissioner Agarwal, did you have anything you wanted to add? Any questions, any comments?
I think you guys did a great job. I think anything I was going to bring up was addressed.
Commissioner Luke has his hand raised. Commissioner Luke.
Commissioner, did you want to say something else?
No, I just wanted to point out regarding chronic absenteeism that I think what we were discussing during the school inspection was that on the California school dashboard, because of the class size of both Hillcrest and Camp Kemp, they do not have chronic absenteeism data, and they do not break down the data by race. But what we did have was suspension data, and on the dashboard right now, it appears that the suspension data is 13.2% suspended at least one day. So I believe they update that every year, so that's for 2022. 13.2% were suspended at least one day. But also keep in mind that the student population is, of course, 100% socioeconomically disadvantaged and 36.4% English learners. So I just wanted to put that data out there.
Thank you. Okay, I think that I'm the only one that hasn't given you any comments or suggestions, and so I just wanted to say, I also just wanted to echo what everyone else has said, that I think the work that you all have done here is really fantastic. And having seen it in process, one thing that I would add is that just getting a hold of the data in the first place and the sort of persistence and effort that you went through in order to get that was a big part of the win here.
Heroic.
Yeah, because I think that, to me, the sentence at the end of the first page where you say, "We hope that this report provides a foundation for conversations about school improvement," is kind of the crux of what you're going for here, because obviously, like, we're not statisticians, you have this expertise, but we're a commission, right? And we're not consultants with years of experience of analyzing school data. But you have unearthed data.
Yeah.
You've done your best to analyze it and really, as Karen said, kind of approach it from different angles to try to get some insights out of it. I think you have gotten some insights out of it. I think certainly if we passing this on to the County Office of Education or the Board of Supervisors, then people will have questions, right? And they'll want to re-examine it or do more. But just by raising the questions and starting the conversation, I think you've made a really important contribution.
And just by the way, data exists for Canyon Oaks and Gateway as well. I can't tell you what it says because I didn't analyze it, but it exists.
Yeah, so anyway, I look forward to seeing like where we go with this too, because I do think it's the beginning of something. And by kind of shining a light on what's going on, you've raised a lot of important questions and tried to give some answers, but it's hard. I think we also should acknowledge it's hard to get to conclusive answers when you only have so much.
Right, this is not the answer, you know, this.
But you're framing some super important questions.
Very
You're also giving us a framework to consider. You're educating us and helping us get on board to understand what the work is. And I really appreciate that because I could not have figured out all this and just understanding some of the terminology and giving, you know, the idea of how the points are assessed.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a really incredible piece of work.
Profound. Thank you.
Commissioner Nora, did you have something else?
When you like asked earlier, like what was the outcome, I guess, of like our project, I think what we discovered was that it was more of like a fundamental issue with the school system in the like the hall or the court school. Like year after year, sure, there were lots of youth who definitely like were performing at grade level or even exceeding grade level. But I think for the most part, majority of the youth were way below grade level, and like obviously, I think few of the graduates were at the 6th grade level. So I think this is like a fundamental issue with the like court school. So I think like if we wanted to have a project that assessed like this data more thoroughly and attempted to like resolve it, or like I guess if that could be done, or I guess address it, I think it's more of a fundamental issue with how the schools ran and how the youth are learning, I guess.
Great. So back to the motion, which is to adopt the report as a official commission report. I didn't hear, we will get to public comment. I didn't hear any commissioners.
I got comments from Monroe and Karen.
Just that they were more wording things.
Yeah, small.
That's sort of substantive. I think it's still in the spirit of what you presented here. So okay, so the motion on the floor is to adopt the report. So why don't we call for public comment now?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, members of the public, if you wish to comment on item 5B, the education testing report, please raise your hand in Zoom. Okay, no hands are raised, and I believe we have one comment from the room. Bill No.
Bill No, Redwood City again. A couple of thoughts about everything I've heard around today, and that is, I mean, there's no doubt about it. People that are incarcerated have 2 hands tied behind their backs when it comes to education, simply because of the environment that they're in, which means the learning environment they're in. I'm a retired educator. Some people in this room might sound like they have similar backgrounds, so you've probably heard of something called differentiated learning. And what that simply means is that we don't all learn the same way. And if we don't address that, we're not sensitive to it, then you're going to have these kind of situations where you describe, you have students fighting in your classroom, and where Commissioner Bocanegra is saying things like, you know, this is amazing because his experience with the youth here in the facilities is that they're crying out for education, they're craving for education. So, as someone, in my experience, I'm not a big fan of standardized testing. And believe me, standardized testing has been around the block and politicized a lot. And it's sort of like who controls the standardized testing sort of defines the students and progress, what have you. I would just make a suggestion that one thing that I would do is I would convene some kind of, I don't know if I would call it a listening session, but give the students an opportunity to be more empowered in their own education. What that means is you bring them together and you say, what is it that we're missing? What is it that you want to learn? What is, you know, how can we do that? Secondly, I want to point out, if I heard right, that students who had IEPs were actually making a little more progress than the students who didn't have IEPs. What does that tell you? That screams out, and I used to work in special education, and special education which, by the way, the reason that came about was because of the Civil Rights Act.
Mhm.
Okay, back in the 60s, there was a real civil right, okay, education. And so with the kind of support that we get with IPs, we need to think about what kind of support mechanisms is there not going on for our other students. And one more thing that I thought about was, you know, the other advantage of kids in public school have to kids that are on the inside that are locked up is they can at least go somewhere and get the support they need, either tutoring or another environment where they can study. I seriously wonder what kind of an environment students have when they're not in their quote education mode to be learning on their own in the environment that they're in. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, was it the Kemp building, whatever? That building in itself could be a big improvement for education. And here's the chance to really design stuff on your terms, not any other terms out there that may be trying to define you or you're letting define you guys. So I'll just leave it at that.
I want to say one comment. So Kemp students were doing better than Hillcrest students.
What do you know?
So that's good. Now that could also be a gender thing. But yes, they're doing better than Hillcrest students. And when you look in here and you see the rate of learning for Hillcrest students and the rate of learning for Kemp students, keep in mind the rate of learning for Hillcrest students includes Kemp students. And so the Hillcrest only youth are at more deficit than what the numbers are reflecting.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wilson. In the interest of time, let's keep moving on to getting a vote on this motion. I believe, just to clarify, the motion is to adopt the report provided on testing and educational progress with some small wording and typo and grammatical changes that have been provided separately, but without any substantive changes to the recommendation. Is that clear for everybody?
Yes.
Yes. All in favor of adopting the report? Say aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
And a huge thank you.
Thank you,
for doing this.
Commissioner Wilson and
hard
Commissioner Norrie,
work.
and Mr. Grieve.
Yes.
These guys were unbelievable.
They did the work. All right, great. We have not yet gotten to 5A, the Education Inspection Report, which is the most substantial thing that we have left. And actually, we also need to get to talking about the officer nominations. It is 7:25. Normally we go 2 hours until 7:15, although I don't know if everyone noticed, but in the last 6 months, I stopped putting an end time on the agenda because it was fruitless. Like we would, whatever. Stop trying to time each agenda item. But I want to put it to the commissioners that are present, since we have been here for 2 hours longer. Do we want to extend our time and get to other agenda items? Do we want to table those agenda items to another meeting, knowing that we have a meeting on November 28th? And normally we don't have a meeting in December, but I do have this room reserved on December 19th.
Just in case.
Okay, all right. With all that said, I'm not making a motion, but would someone like to, or should we have discussion about what we should do with the meeting? Yes.
I move we defer considering the education report to the November meeting, and that we extend this meeting for 15 minutes because I think we need to deal with the officer nomination.
I'll second that.
All right, the motion has been seconded. Any?
Does that include 5D as well?
5D I already covered.
Okay.
I already covered earlier. Yeah.
Is Ruchi on this agenda?
Ruchi is on, and 5C we haven't gotten to either, and Ruchi.
It was all in the,
Is your motion to defer 5C as well?
all of 5. That's
Okay, all the rest of 5. Yeah, and move on to, and I noticed that it says 7 officer nominations, should say 6.
Oh, I guess my one question would be, I would like to share this draft with BSCC. And so I guess I would be asking, even though this isn't approved, I'd like,
Oh, that one, yeah.
I'd like permission to send this to BSCC, which is doing its own educational inspection. And I haven't sent it to them because I didn't have an approved copy. So that's the one thing I'd say.
Is it incomplete though? Because Monroe, didn't you have a section that you had to add or no?
So
No. Okay.
since we haven't even taken up consideration of that report yet, I don't want us to talk about whether or not to approve sending it to BSCC. We can talk offline about what the committee is empowered to do or not do.
Okay.
I think if we mark it as draft, the committee can get feedback on it, right? So, but anyway, the motion on the floor from Commissioner Swope is to defer the rest of section 5 of the agenda to November, and then to take up the officer nominations, which is incorrectly marked as 7 on the agenda. It should be 6. And that's the motion on the floor. And it was seconded by Commissioner Rasmussen. Does anyone have any objection or discussion on that? Mr. Clerk.
We have one hand raised. I don't know if it's for this motion, but let me just double check.
All right.
Jennifer Blanco, I'll give you the permission to talk. Please let me know if you're commenting on this motion or maybe another topic.
Hi, good evening. Actually, no, I'm not commenting on the motion. I was trying to speak prior to the motion happening.
And speak on what?
Well, actually, it was a question for y'all. So if you allow me to ask the question, I don't know if you can answer, but if not, that's okay.
Could you tell us what the question is and if it's on the topic?
Sure. Well, allow me to introduce myself first. Thank you so much for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Jennifer Blanco, and I'm a trustee for the San Bruno Park School District. And well, my comment is, I don't know how many of you are actually educators that serve on this commission. I don't know, but my concern about the conversation that either you guys are having or have had or will have in the future is, I really think that for us to really understand why our schools are failing our kids, I think we really should look to folks who are experts in this field. And I'm going to give you guys 2 names. I would suggest that you, that if the commission on your free time, to please look at, go up on Google and find and listen to Dr. Victor Rios, who's actually from Oakland, and he'll share with you his story. And he's a sociology professor down in UC Santa Barbara, to speak about how our schools are failing our kids and the lack of connection that we are making with them. And they also talk about the the school to prison pipeline. Or you can also look for Dr. Jeffrey Duncan Andrade, here our very own from San Francisco State University. So I would love to send this information to you. Maybe I can send you guys the link. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Ms. Blanco. And if you look at the agenda on page 2, there's an email address there where you can send more information if you like. Thank you for that comment on the investigations we're doing into the schools. All right, so we are back to the motion. I think that, do we need to call for public comment on this? I don't think so. Yeah. So the motion on the floor is to defer 5 to November and to get to the officer nominations for 15 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions. Good. All right. So the rest of section 5 is deferred to November, and let me jump in on the officer nominations. I was the chair, I guess is the right term, for the nominating committee, which included Commissioner Ginevro, Commissioner Bocanegra, and Commissioner Hugh Levy. And so our job was to try to sort of lay out the process for how we choose our officers for the next year, to receive nominations and, any commissioner who says they're interested in a particular role, and where we might have not had some commissioners interested to kind of shake the bushes and try to nudge some people and say, hey, maybe it's a good idea for you to run to be an officer. And so the result of all of that was that, first of all, Commissioner Rasmussen has expressed interest in being the chair of the commission next year. And she's unopposed at this point. No one else has said that they'd like to be chair next year. And so, Commissioner Rasmussen, I'll turn it over to you if you want to say anything. Just remember, we are, sorry, generally for these officer nominations, what we're doing this month is just letting people who are interested say a few words, and then in November is when we'll actually have the vote to choose our officers for next year. Sorry, with that.
Well, for the sake of time, I really won't say much. Monroe's been working with me for a few months, and I think he's been kind of showing me the ropes of what he does and whatnot. And so I'm looking forward to taking on the role. It's a little intimidating. There's a lot to learn, but I'm willing to do it and looking forward to doing it if you choose me.
Thank you, Commissioner Rasmussen. Okay, and the next one that that I'll talk about is vice chair membership. We'll come to vice chair administration in a second. Vice chair membership, we did have some interest in vice chair membership, but ultimately where we wound up is that our prospective commissioner, Magtani Ruchi, Commissioner, she's not commissioner yet, Ruchi Magtani, said that she would be willing to take on the role of vice chair membership. This is assuming, of course, that we actually get her approved as a commissioner and sworn in at the beginning of the November meeting, which is in process. And then we could elect to be vice chair of membership. Is Ruchi, are you still on? She is. Here, I'll allow her to talk.
Hi, Ruchi.
Still on. Hi.
She's here.
Ruchi, we can hear you, I think. Did you want to say anything?
No, just like I was interested in contributing to the commission further if I do become a commissioner, and like bring more people into this community and like widen its reach and make it more accessible to more people. Yeah.
Ruchi, I think you have Karen and my support.
Thank you.
Yes. We appreciate you stepping
We
forward.
appreciate you stepping up and expressing interest. So unless there are any other commissioners, I don't think there were any other commissioners who were interested in being vice chair membership at this time. So so that's where we are with vice chair membership. Thank you, Ruchi. All right, the next one was vice chair administration, and we did have a few people who were interested in this role, and they were to my latest information, which might change, they might tell me, but was that Steve Grieve, who is another prospective commissioner, will hopefully be sworn in.
Prospective commissioner.
Will hopefully be sworn in November so that we can, so that he can be eligible. Was interested in being vice chair administration, as were Commissioner Agarwal and also Commissioner Liu. Commissioner Liu, what was that signal with your hands? What did that mean?
I was not calling for help. I was merely stating that I'm no longer interested in that position.
Oh.
There you go. That was one of the updates that we were interested in. So we're down to two then. So Mr. Grieve, Commissioner Agarwal, maybe we'll go in alphabetical order of last name. Commissioner Agarwal, did you want to say a few things about being vice chair administration?
Yeah, sure, I would love to. My name is Zahara. For those of you who don't know, this is my first year being a commissioner on the JJTPC.
but my second year kind of being involved with the commission as I was youth liaison last year from the youth commission. I've also been involved with PeerPoint since the start of my freshman year in high school. I would love to be vice chair of administration. In my time on the commission, I've worked on multiple projects. I've worked with Commissioner Wilson and others on the transition plan project. I've worked on creating and implementing a website for youth and probation over 18, which is now live and being used. But overall, the JJTBC kind of speaks very deeply to the work that I want to do going into my future. I hope to practice law after college and law school, possibly, within dependency or juvenile justice related fields. And I would welcome this opportunity to kind of expand my skills and work with all of you more closely. I will caveat my speech with saying that while I'm applying to schools in the area, I can't guarantee where I'm going until March. So I might not necessarily be able to serve the full year term, but nonetheless, I'm still very interested in the position, and regardless of where I go, would be able to serve until like September of next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Agarwal.
I'm gonna pull a Wesley.
You're stepping out?
You're gonna pull a Wesley. That's hilarious.
All right, we're down to one candidate for vice chair of administration then.
Perhaps Steve would step in September, should.
If that's, if you need help, let me know.
Possibility. Okay, great. So then, those are our three officers for next year. Those are our three officer roles for next year. And in November, the candidates that we have heard from will have an opportunity to vote on them. Two things I want to add. One is that just because we have heard from some commissioners tonight doesn't mean that another commissioner couldn't raise their hand at some point in the next 30 days, before we have our next meeting.
Right. The process isn't closed.
The process is not closed. So just want to put that out there for anyone. And the second thing I wanted to say is that I just wanted to remind everybody that one restriction of the Brown Act is that having what are called chain conversations between commissioners on a particular topic, in other words, a series of one-on-one conversations about a particular topic, is not allowed under the Brown Act. So no campaigning during this time. Okay, so that was the other thing. Commissioner, do you have a question on this?
I just wanted to make an announcement.
Oh,
okay.
Before we get there, real quick, we do also there was under this agenda item, letter D, we do also have two new youth liaisons. Tara, are you Tara?
Yay.
Tara, welcome.
Yay.
This is one of our. Sardana. Tara Sardana is going to be one of our youth liaisons from the, which means liaison from the Youth Commission next year. And we will have two. The second of whom will be Rikov Shah, who is also a youth commissioner. So we have two new youth liaisons for next year. Youth Commission liaisons. Welcome.
I just wanted to say, Monroe, that Tara asked me before the meeting about where this meeting room was, and she worked very hard to sort of run across the CSM campus to try to find where you guys are meeting. So there's some dedication there.
It doesn't show at all.
The calm.
It doesn't show at all. All right. So I think that concludes the section on officer nominations and youth liaisons. Commissioner Wilson, you want to make an announcement?
So
we're on to the next section, which is announcements.
Announcements.
Yes.
So this will be my last meeting as a commissioner. I am going to resign, but still remain involved as a volunteer. I want my position to go to other people who are excited to be part of the commission, and I'm doing it now so that we can get a move on bringing more people onto the commission. So I have a number of different reasons. The reasons are complex, but I still am committed to the work and still want to support the commission. But I will just not be a official commissioner. Meetings will be faster.
I'm not sure about that.
Coming to the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I will be back for the November meeting, but you know, family members were like, "You are leaving tonight, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I will."
Commissioner Wilson,
Yeah, there are no words.
thank you for your many years of service.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we could go on with questions and accolades, which we will over coffee or a walk on the beach.
A walk on the
something.
beach.
Or the
Yeah.
November
We'll stay in
meeting.
touch, but I guess in the interest of the late hour, I would say, just say thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, we'll find other things to appreciate. All right, and with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you all. The time is now 7:42 PM and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
do we
Clerk.
keep these and bring them next time, or do we give them to you?
You can give it to me.
Safer to give them to.